For the story on Pro Stock, here's Bob Fry.
Dave, one of the most talked about things in pro stock as we head into the 1994 season is the return of Daryl Alderman, the former two-time Winston drag racing champion, now back at the wheel of the Wayne County Speed Shop. Daryl, you picked up in qualifying the other day like you were never away from the racetrack.
Yeah, I'd like to be running those numbers today, though. The track conditions have really changed on us, and, you know, we've slowed down dramatically. But it's real exciting to be back, especially with Wayne County Speed Shop and Mopar as our sponsor.
Some people think this is a new car for you, but this is actually the vehicle you took to the Winston title.
Well, it's one of the older cars that we used, and Wayne County did the updates to it, just like Scott's car. And, you know, we're knocking the rust out from under it, and hopefully in a race or two here we'll be dialed in.
Daryl Alderman is certainly going to make a lot of noise in pro stock this year. There is another car in the team, of course, and that belongs to Scott Jeffrion. And the luck of the draw, the way the cars have qualified, the two Dodges are on opposite sides of the ladder. If they meet, it can't be until the final round. And if they do, they'll have to beat that Johnson clan.
Problems indeed for Shelly Anderson. We'll see how she fares getting ready for round number 3. Here is Jim Yates in the Dynamax Pontiac as we switch to bodied race cars. You're on board with Daryl Alderman in the Wayne County Speed Shop Dodge Daytona as Daryl gets ready to go into reverse and back up after that long burnout.
Some of the Pro Stock drivers use an air shifter and just push a button, but you can see by all of those levers that Daryl Alderman prefers to pull the gears manually on the Lenco transmission. Now, Daryl had a great qualifying effort. In the number 2 slot at a 7:07, beat David Rampy in round number 1. Daryl has been flabbergasted, I think, by the reception he's received from the fans here in Southern California on his return. Banners in the stands, T-shirts saying, "Welcome back, Daryl." It's really been pretty neat. Now, Jim Yates, his opponent, the Pontiac, is my dark horse to win a race this year. He qualified number 7 at a 7:14, beat Steve Schmidt in round number 1. Alderman Dave McClellan had a huge qualifying effort, number 2 at a 7:07.
And the interesting thing to note, Steve, is their first round time. Alderman in the first round ran a 7:16. That earned him lane choice. But it was a 7:21 for Jim Yates. He narrowed a little bit the difference between the two cars based upon their qualifying time. Look at this shot on board with Daryl Alderman as he concentrates on the tree. He stages first. Here comes Yates. Daryl Alderman, just by about a foot, wins the race. Alderman's elapsed time, a 7:19 at 192. 7:20 for Jim Yates, nearly identical reaction times. That's why this one was so close at the finish line. Here in replay, look as they leave the line. They were identical to the hundredth of a second on reaction time. Alderman was inside, pulling the levers as we saw on our onboard camera and sawing away at that wheel, keeping the Dodge in the center of the lane. But here comes the Pontiac. Here in this replay, you see the margin of victory at the finish line, 14 thousandths of a second. Steve?
Well, welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be back, especially to be back with Wayne County and Mopar as a sponsor. It's really good.
A 7:19. What happened to the 7.0s we saw Thursday?
Well, you know, we come in here and the little car was leaving real good and straight, and we tried to, you know, make it work a little better in 60 feet, and we've got lost a little bit.
Can you find it again?
Well, hopefully we'll go back and take the data that we have, Steve, and try to make it go in the O's again.
Keep it going.
Thank you.
Stevie may have been gone for a couple of years, but he sure hasn't forgotten how to smile, particularly when he heads into the Final Four.
Absolutely, and that smile is not all there is to Daryl Alderman. Well, there you're looking at Gary Brown in the black and white Oldsmobile. His competition, you saw just a wink of him backing into your picture, the two-time and current Winston champion, Warren Johnson. And he picked up where he left off, qualifying number 1 right here for the Chief Auto Parts Winter Nationals. Let's take a moment and look back at round number 1 when this same Gary Brown, who qualified number 9 at a 7:14, met up with Bob Glidden, who had qualified number 8 at a 7:14 in the Ford Thunderbird. Now, we had expected to see the new Mustang. Well, it did not perform well in tests, and Glidden has parked it, he says, forever in favor of the Ford Quality Care Thunderbird. But watch what happened here in round number 1 earlier today. Glidden had a tiny little hole shot, but something went wrong in the drivetrain, and it was Gary Brown headed to round number 2, where he now faces up with Warren Johnson.
WJ had qualified number 1 at a 7:06 and defeated Ricky Smith in round number 1. And just before this second round race with Gary Brown, he switched lanes. He owned the lane choice. It's his pick. And anytime prior to staging, you can move him around, and he did just that. He put Gary Brown in the lane furthest from the camera. Let's see if it pays off.
This could be upset time. Brown with a hole shot, but not enough. Warren Johnson ekes this one out at 7:10, 195 miles an hour.
We might just have to call him Pensive Pat instead of Top Gun. That's Pat Austin, obviously thinking about his upcoming semifinal round top fuel race with none other than Shelly Anderson. We'll be getting to that in just a few moments. Right now, we are still in competition in Pro Stock, and here we look again at the most recent race between Warren Johnson and Gary Brown. Steve told you it was close at the finish line. How close? 30 thousandths of a second. You want to see what that means in distance? Take a look at this in stop motion. Just a fender length win for WJ. Steve?
Well, my friend, it took all of that 7:10 to catch Gary Brown.
Oh, yeah, I figured Gary was going to be on the tree this round. We knew we'd be giving up a little bit by going to the other lane, but we just wanted to get to the end.
Sooner or later, you're going to run into one Dodge or another. You looking forward to that?
No, those Dodgers are going to run into some Oldsmobiles.
Whoa, I love it.
Oh, Steve, the gauntlet is being hurled everywhere we look in the pit area and around this racetrack.
They are smacking in Pro Stock. And here is one of those Dodges. Kurt Johnson likes to call them Jeeps. But that is not the transfer case lever that Scott Jeffrion is reaching for. And he is up against Larry Morgan, the super clean Oldsmobile. And Morgan had a clean run in qualifying at a 7:09 to grab the number 5 spot, and he beat Mark Howick in his Oldsmobile in round 1. Now Scott Jeffrion, he has qualified number 4 at a wonderful 7:08, and he beat Ray Franks in round number 1. This one could be one right on the starting line, David.
It sure could, and both of them good levers. Jeffrion, of course, now with a teammate. The big question is, on everybody's mind, how is the return of Daryl Alderman going to affect Scott Jeffrion? The interesting thing to note, Larry Morgan, as you saw on our inboard camera, uses a button, like Steve told us earlier. He's got an air shifter. Watch. Bang, bang, bang. Every time he hits it, a gear change.
Dueling in-car cameras, and it is Jeffrion by 3 thousandths of a second. 7:14 to a 7:15.
Steve, a very slight advantage in the thousandths of a second was gained off the starting line by Larry Morgan. Watch the car in the far lane. If you pick it up, you got better eyes than I do. He and Scott Jeffrion dueled it out all the way down the racetrack, with Morgan pushing the button and Jeffrion pulling the levers. These two Pro Stockers streaked to the finish line, where the big speed by Jeffrion made the difference. He ran over 195 miles an hour. Morgan was at 193.
Scott came out saying, well, that was a close race. 3 thousandths difference.
Yeah, the bottom line is, though, is we got that wind light, and from Mopar and the guys from Wayne County, I'll tell you, they've been working so hard over this winter, and we've been putting some good mile an hour up on the scoreboard this weekend. We're enjoying it, I'll tell you.
You may need a few hundreds, though. That 14, I don't know.
Well, you know, we'll just take them one round at a time. Believe me, I got the best in the business back in my pit area.
One thing for certain, we're going to have at least a couple of Dodges and one Oldsmobile in the semifinals. And we'll have a second one as well, because this is the last pair of round number 2. You're looking at the Pennzoil Cutlass. This is Mike Thomas, the Tennessean, has surprised a lot of people here, as he is definitely a dark horse. He qualified number 6 at a 7:11 and beat George Marnell in the first round. His opponent, the ever-tough Kurt Johnson, number 3 qualifier at a 7:08. He put his Mark Christopher Oldsmobile Cutlass across the finish line first over Mark Osborne in round number 1, and in doing so, earned the lane choice here in the second round. He had an elapsed time win of a 7:10, while his competition, Mike Thomas, had a 7:13.
Kurt, number 2 in the world last year, only to his father. Oh, great job by Johnson. And another just classic Pro Stock confrontation, a 7:15 over a 7:16. Kurt Johnson's winning speed, 193 miles an hour. Still a couple short of the Dodge's standards.
The pairings for the Final Four find Kurt Johnson racing the Dodge of Daryl Alderman, Kurt holding the lane choice, a 7:15 to a 7:19. His dad, Warren Johnson, races Scott Jeffrion, and this time WJ holds the choice of lanes with his 7:10. Steve?
Well, it looks like it's going to be the Johnsons against the Dodge Boys in the Final Four, huh?
Quite a battle out there, isn't it? What do we run that time, Steve?
A 14.
14. That's the slowest run we
No,
made.
make that a 15. I'm sorry.
A 15. We slowed down. We ran 3:10s in 08 and 09. We're just trying to apply some of the knowledge we gained last year to this racetrack. Thanks, Steve.
And when the conditions keep changing, you need to draw on all the knowledge. Dates back in Southern California drag racing as long as this sport has existed here on the West Coast, practically. We're into pro stock. This is the semifinal round, and it is the Dodge Boys against Daddy and Son in the family Oldsmobiles.
But first, a quick word about NHRA Now, presented by Castro GTX. It's a 24-hour drag racing information line with the latest info on your favorite drivers and events. Call 1-900-468-NHRA and you'll hear the voice of Dave McClellan. Under 18, ask your parents. Charges will appear on your phone bill. This could be a race of the light cutters between Alderman and Kurt Johnson. Johnson hasn't ever raced Daryl Alderman. He wasn't driving these cars when Alderman left the sport 2 years ago. This will be the first time these two have met.
This is only the second full season that Kurt Johnson has been in competition in pro stock. His first full year netted him number 2 in the Winston Chase, right behind his dad, Daryl Alderman, of course, 2 times a Winston champion. The motor's up against the limiter. And a red light for Kurt Johnson. Daryl Alderman pulls the levers. He's already the winner. Across the finish line, the parachute deployed. Daryl Alderman with a 7:12 at 193 miles an hour advances to the finals in his first race after 2 years absence from the sport. Watch again in replay. Kurt Johnson in the near lane. Leaves just a fraction of a second too soon. Alderman had a good light, but Kurt was just too quick, and Alderman picks up the advantage and the win. Here's the view out the windshield of the Mopar Dodge Daytona, driven by Scott Jeffrion. His competition, the other half of the Johnson family, WJ, the reigning Winston champ. Down at the far end of the racetrack, let's join Steve and Daryl.
How many times over the last 2 years have you dreamed of this moment?
I tell you, I don't think there was a night went by, Steve, that I haven't dreamed of it.
A 7:12 against a red lighting Kurt.
Well, that 12 sounds real good, and of course the red light does too, because he's been running real strong all day.
You know, your reaction times are so good. I think you're spooking these guys a little bit. They're afraid of you, seriously.
Well, we can use a little spooking them, because I'm a little rusty yet.
All right, let's see you're going to race in the final. Dave?
Well, it's going to be either another Dodge or an Oldsmobile, and either way, it is going to be a classic struggle. Warren Johnson out to gain his 3rd Winston championship in a row and would like to start off the season with a victory. But he's got to get past this car. You're riding with Scott Jeffrion. Through the windshield, you see the Christmas tree, and now watch the gear changes. WJ ahead by more than a car length. Warren Johnson wins it 7:09. So much for Daryl's hopes of a 7:12, earning the lane choice 195 miles an hour plus. Good ET and big speed for Warren Johnson. That's the final pairing. WJ and Daryl Alderman. Warren holds the lane choice in the championship round. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Coming out. This is the Daryl Alderman pit area. He's up against Warren Johnson in the finals, and I guess they're going to put the big thumper, if there is such a thing, into the frame rails of the Dodge Daytona. The Wayne County Speed Shop team pulling out the Beaton
versus Daryl Alderman, the fans' dream finale.
Mine too. I can't ask for anything better than this. What a storybook finish this one is, with Daryl Alderman returning to the racing wars after 2 years absence, makes it to the finals at his very first appearance. And what can you say about Warren Johnson? He came into the semis, did just what he had to do. Greg Anderson, his crew chief, directing traffic. Mike Sullivan doing the same for his driver, Daryl Alderman.
1994 in pro stock may be like the glory years of the 70s when you had the Ford versus the Chevrolet and the fans screaming. only it's going to be Oldsmobile and Dodge, and maybe throwing it forward too if Bob Glidden gets his act together. I've never seen the interest this guy. There isn't anybody in this place that's not standing up.
You bet, as Daryl Alderman may well be, along with Warren Johnson, the only two guys sitting down. Alderman's performance today, a 7.16, a 7.19, and a 7.12. WJ, a 7.12, a 7.10, and a 7.09 in the semis.
They're just sitting there. Little staging battle.
Alderman's in. Alderman leaves. Doesn't even look over at WJ, but he ought to because WJ just passed him. And the title at the Winter Nationals going to Warren Johnson, another 7.09, a losing time of a 7.12 for Daryl Alderman. Here's Bob.
I'll tell you what, you guys aren't too excited. Congratulations.
Oh, my God. This is the best race I think we've won ever. Anyone in the grandstand can see that this is going to be the best year of pro stock racing ever, bar none. Awesome out there.
What a great run that was. Let's take a look at that one again.
Bob, this was a race that was decided by horsepower. The starting line advantage was only 0.08 of a second, and if your eye was quick enough, you saw Daryl Alderman in the Dodge in the far lane lead first. But Warren Johnson ran him down early because at the 8th mile they were side by side as they neared the finish line. 26,000ths of a second separated them. More than a fender length win for that man.
Warren, don't tell me that was just another drag race. That was a Dodge with Daryl Alderman in it.
Oh, I'll tell you, it's a battle up there. Daryl and I are probably the greatest competitors between each other ever in pro stock. I mean, not that we're great by Glidden standards or anything like that, but when we go there, it's the race.
You better get to the starting line. Your guy Greg is about to have a heart attack. He's so excited.
I think the whole team's going to have a coronary.
Warren Johnson starts his march in '94. Dave?
Steve, normally you don't see much emotion out of Warren Johnson, but it's obvious here, and Daryl Alderman over to offer